My name is Terry McFarland. I was a specialist E5 at Huntsville, Alabama at Redstone Arsenal. I was a electrical technician on the Nike high power radar for the Nike missile system and the T1 simulator that was used to train the commanding officer of a Nike high power site.
So before you served, what were you doing before you hopped into the military?
Well, I graduated in 1964 from Camden Central High School, and I was going to college part time, and it wasn't enough hours in my schedule with the college to keep me out of the military. And I was also working at a wire mill. I was a testing technician at the time. I tested wire. And then I got drafted. Of course, I knew exactly what that meant. I was going to go to Vietnam. And I said, well, if I'm going to go in the U.S. Army, I think I'm going to try to get something out of it. I went to a recruiter and asked him if I could still enlist for a school, even though I just got drafted. So then I went through a booklet and I found a couple schools. One was for the Nike high power radar technician, the T1 simulator. And I said, well, how about this one right here for 44 weeks? And he said, well, that's a 3-year enlistment, but you have to take a few tests to see if you qualify. So I took them and I qualified. So I went to school at Huntsville, Alabama. First, I did my basic training. And then I went to Huntsville, Alabama at the start of 44-week school. It consisted of 8 weeks of basic electricity to make sure we have a little sense as to what we might be doing. We would build a radio and some other things. And there was no messing around there because if we did not pass that test on Friday, they said, well, you don't qualify and you're out. And thank the Lord, I passed everyone. I went through as an E1, not making hardly any money at all. As soon as I graduated, I got a promotion to specialist 4. And then after school, I went to a promotion board. I was successful. I was only in the Army for 17 months and I made E5, which back then to do that so fast was pretty good. I stayed right there and I also got married. We expected a baby real soon. So after school, I got orders for Germany. She was 7 months, I think, at the time. And they said, well, we're going to delay your orders for a few months. I found out that there was an opening at Redstone Arsenal for my MOS. And I said, wow. So I went to personnel to see what I could do. And sure enough, within a couple of weeks, I got orders to stay right in Huntsville, Alabama. It was my job to keep with another person, to keep our site running and all the connections, whether there was low power, high power, acquisition radar, and missile tracking radar, and target tracking radar. There were several. So we had to keep our part of it going, the high power radar. And while I was at site, and actually while I was in the school, we came into the site for the first time, and I saw probably 75 to 100 barrels, 55-gallon barrels, off to one corner of the site. And I said, "My God, what the heck's in those barrels?" And they says, "Never mind, it's none of your damn business. Just stay away from them." I said, "Okay." But he was going to be a buck sergeant at a site someplace. He just wanted him to have an idea of what we do and things like that, what we will be doing. But he was a kind of an aggressive person, and we were having lunch one night, and we were having fun with playing cards and just for lunch break. And he says, "Well, fellas, this is the Army. You aren't supposed to be laughing and doing all this kind of stuff. You're supposed to be doing the Army stuff." And I said, "Well, he said, get over there and police up those barrels and stand them up because some are leaning over, tops are gone." And we said, "Well, we were told to stay away from those barrels." He said, "I don't care what you were told. I'm telling you right now to get over there. This is an order to straighten up those barrels." So we go over there, and I had a particular barrel that was a 55-gallon drum that was leaning probably against another barrel, and the top was partially on. So I pulled on it to get it to stand up straight so I could put the tap on it, and it took a lot of energy to get it. So I pulled very, very hard, and finally it came over, and boy, it went back. The liquid went back and forth in it, and splashed right up all over me, in my mouth, and luckily I had glasses on. It was all over my clothing. My whole body was covered in it. After I got splashed with that, I went to a sick bay, or a sick call. Terrible rashes on my arm, had an upset stomach all the time. I was sick. So that was pretty much it in the Army. Even when I got out of the Army, I continued to get sick. And I went to work back at that wire mill. My stomach got so bad that about every month I got so sick. I was vomiting all the time. And I was going to the doctor every day for my rashes on my arms. And then after years, I had all these things going on. And then after several years, a friend of mine told me that you should get into the VA system, get this taken care of for you. So I did. We had a list of several things that was wrong. And one day we had bought a lot on a lake, and we were going to build a house there, and I couldn't quench my thirst. I was working at the county as the deputy commissioner of public works. The county executive looked at me one day and said, "Terry, what the hell are you doing? Whatever you're doing, stop it. You look like hell." I lost probably 40 pounds. And then through my wife's girlfriend at work, she had just gotten diabetes. She said, "Boy, you sound like you got diabetes." And my diabetes kept on getting worse and worse over the years. And finally, I got, I went 15 years after I put in the claim. 15 years of doctors, and nobody would tell me what was wrong with me. A friend of mine told me to call a man. He was the man in upstate New York to go see about chances of getting whatever through the VA. He says, "Well, it just won't work for me being in New York." And so he says, "I know of a law firm. That's all they do is work for veterans to get the disability and the compensation and whatever the veteran could need. I have diabetes, chronic kidney disease, leukemia, neuropathy throughout my whole body, upper and lower extremities, and tinnitus. I got hypothyroidism. My eyes, I have retinopathy, glaucoma, and macular degeneration. I had brain surgery about 6 years ago. That has gotten worse and worse, and now they're thinking perhaps I have Parkinson's. It's getting so bad they had to shut the deep brain stimulator. It worked great for 3 years, and then it just progressively got worse and worse. And so now the generator is off. So they're deciding to put me through the brain surgery again and upgrade the stimulator that's in my brain. Also, I have AFib, Helen Ponton, always telling us and keeping us involved in what's going on. Within 3 months, I had 60% with PTSD. Oh, yeah, that's another thing I had. With the diabetes, the kidneys, and the eyes, I finally got 100%. After the 100%, we were just ecstatic because the inflation was going on. Because we're in a nice new development in Florida, and our HOA went up, and our insurance has gone up, and taxes gone up, and our lives have changed. It's been wonderful. It's changed our lives immensely. Helen Ponton is probably the best attorney, and just can't say enough about Hill Ponton. Taxes and everything's going up and up and up, that we might have to move back to New York in the cold. We didn't have to and won't have to now. We're doing great, and just cannot say enough about Helen Ponton, and just wonderful. They work, they know what they're doing, they know every in and out, and I can't say enough good. And it's been wonderful. It's been a wonderful experience working with them, and it's the best money I have ever spent. Like, I just can't say enough good about them. Let's see.